morning to you. Today is a Wednesday, the 8th of May, and it has just gone 1 minute after 6, which means sasikhathi sekusile breakfast show. And we are very happy to have you join us today. Eluhlelweni ibito lami nguSifiso ngwanqumalo anzibe angihambe ngedwa Mfambeni, very good morning to you.
Good morning to you too.
How are you waking up today?
I'm waking up very happy today.
Blessed.
Grateful to be alive, yes. And thank you for joining us on the show. Of course, do join us on our YouTube page, Eswatini TV, and of course on our DSTV channel. We are on 286. Good morning and welcome to the show. Namhlanje will be joined by the project coordinator from the Study Loan Recovery Consortium, Kuku Mahlalela, tosingeta nje an update on the repayment of government's scholarships. Lakumela ukuthi itolo besine baka Labor, Ministry of Labor, basi khumbuta nje nomake basivetela the number of scholarships that the ministry is handing out to EMA students. Namhlanje sibuke ukuthi ingabe wona lama students lawo la sekaba ngema beneficiaries ayakhona ibhadala invele back imali yahulumende. In 2019, the consortium identified 26,888 beneficiaries, and about 10,000 of those individuals signed the scholarship repayment consent forms. Ngokushekeke report yelitiko laka Labor ya December yemnyaka wa 2022, lelovisi se lakhona kuthola imali kuma beneficiaries lenganga 280 million emalangeni kusukela ngemnyaka wa 2017, and between January 2023 and December a total of 1,746 beneficiaries also signed consent forms. Kanti ke kuyavela nokuthi le imali lekolekiwe emnyakeni ophelile ingu 59,612,000 emalangeni. Sidaba sixoxisana nje naye Gugu Mahlalela kuva ukuthi vele i-compliance eseyinganani nje kuso sive samasatele saba ngama beneficiaries since 2017.
Imali labayikoleka kolena imali lebhadalwa abantwana labayi enjoy a privilege yokufunda.
Yeah, letawusita labanye labatawu apply nyalo.
Indeed, it's very important. It's quite a lot of money. 59,000, that's a lot of money. But yeah, and I'm sure it's set down. But on another one, today we have a very interesting discussion as we explore educational assessment in Southern Africa with Ms. Hlengiwe, which is the Communications Officer of Ekeswa, the Examinations Council of Eswatini. We want to discuss the conference, the 4th SAAEA conference, which stands for the Southern Africa Association for Educational Assessment. It is a conference that is being hosted by the Examinations Council of Eswatini. This conference is crucial for advancing assessment practices in the 4th Industrial Revolution era, focusing on competency-based education and digital tools to ensure equity as well as relevance. Now, EQUESA's initiatives include digital assessment tools and capacity building for educators, aiming for global standards alignment. They anticipate submissions addressing innovative methodologies, technology integration, which is what Livelagangwane really wants now more than ever, as well as some of the COVID-19 challenges that has since confronted the globe since the outbreak of the pandemic. Now, through workshops and networking, Ekeswa fosters collaboration while adapting to remote assessment amid the pandemic. Collaborating with diverse stakeholders, they promote excellence in assessment across the region. Now, the conference venue, which is going to be a Sibayani Lodge in Matsapa, will offer accommodation for networking beyond the conference, and Ekeswa aims to strengthen partnerships and sustainably enhance educational assessment in Eswatini as well as Southern Africa as a region. It's going to be a very insightful conversation that we're going to have with Hlengiwe in about 25 minutes, so just stay tuned for that one, as well as Lulu's conversation later at 7:30. But for now, let's look at the leading headlines this morning.
It's 5 minutes after 6. Dr. Lasbuge, E-Times of Eswatini, your leading headlines. Police investigations reveal how woman deceived government officials in Nkosika's name. She managed to secure a job at Home Affairs, got international passport, and a government house for hubby. Police discovered that she had no relationship whatsoever with royalty or Inkosi God. You can read more on page 2. And in other news, there were 4 killed and 7 injured after a truck crashed into a shop eHlatikulu Itolo. Kulanyele hamba imbili, what PM would have told workers on May Day. You can read that also on page 2. Kansikulanyele hamba imbili on Emma Charge's salary review. Magistrates feel neglected and a mob assault kills man, a 50-year-old man over break-in attempt.
Times of Eswatini this Wednesday morning, making the big story. It never rains but pours as Sundowns players have been locked out. Renowned Premier League side reportedly in rent arrears for April. Heavenly intervention. Denver Sundowns players ahead of a game. It has been reported that they have been locked out of their clubhouse. On another one, Sikali beats Sadak top scorers. Sihlangu and Green Mamba Sabelo Sikali Nzinisa's goal tally is unmatched by most scorers in the Southern African Development Community region. Stanguge Uhamba Mbili in the selected Sadak top scorers with 19 goals, followed by a player with only 15 goals, and he plays for Zwaneng Galaxy. So Arteta called miss final game. Michael Arteta could miss Arsenal's final match of the season, which is going to be against Everton in a potentially seismic blow to their title chase. And so about 10-men Chiefs let lead sleep. Kaizer Chiefs drew with 2-2 and 2-2 with the ETX Galaxy. They could have won this game, but they couldn't maintain the lead. The last story, Eric is furious with 5 players, and that's Ten Hag.
All right, leading headlines on the Eswatini Observer: truck tragedy. On the right is a picture of firefighters working at the accident scene after a tipper truck plunged into a shop at Magele near Hlatikulu yesterday, and 4 people were killed as the truck crashed into the shop. Woman with a baby on her back, 2 children killed, 6 others rushed to hospital in critical condition. 31 homeless after houses demolished and shops run out of brown sugar.
It's a title decider. That's the leading headline. Kutemidlalo Eswatini Sports Observer. This one speaks to the Babane Swallows game. Leta idlala ke kulandzela na impela sonto lebuya kuyo lapho khona iwine an important game against Highlanders. Swallows general manager says they want 3 points in the next game, and Ezulwini coach promises to fight back as they play Babane Swallows, and match is going to be played on Saturday. Glenyege Highlanders will not die on my watch. This is according to Chief Ali Homongwe, who speaks in there on that photo with the NSC during their meeting in Pretoria, South Africa. Sihlangu to report for full-time camp in 2 weeks. The Eswatini senior national soccer team Sihlangu Semnikati is set to start full-time camp on May 20, and this is despite currently being without a coach.
Asibukale thamba imbili weSwatini Daily News: fatal accident at Hlatikulu, truck rams into shop and kills 4 people. Kulanyela hamba imbili, Minister Polile Shakantu has signed a protocol cooperation agreement in Turkey, and the Prime Minister arrived safely in Kenya ahead of AFSH summit.
There's a massive clear-outed bull, over 7 said to be on the transfer list. MD Ali says some have overstayed their welcome, and Frimpong signing a mistake, but also a wake-up call. No formal approach for Mngiti agent. That's another leading story. It's a moment of reckoning for Mbabane Swallows this coming weekend as they play Ezulwini United in a game that could really decide if they are the champions of the league this season. And that is the leading headlines this morning. Amaphephandabeni elive sitawatsabela ke talapha ekhaya eSwati after the break.
Kuthuthuka kwembango, kuthuthuka kwetinkhundla. Kuthuthuka kwetinkhundla yintuthuko yelive lonke. Thokotela luhlelo sive siyathuthuka nasikulethela intuthuko emimangweni njalo ngaboLesithathu nase ishaye yagabanca insimbi yesithupha kusihlwa. Sive siyathuthuka.
Asimza sinamukele solobukela hlelo Kusile Breakfast Show na Titi Ndzaba tfundva ngilungelele Makagula. Live leSwatini libalelwa emaveni lahamba embili vekatini leAfrika ngekusebentisa manyolo ngelizinga lelifanele. Lokhu kuvetwe benhlangano yebonye belivekati leAfrika emhlanganweni wetindvuna tetekulima letibuye emaveni layingcenye yalenhlangano. Lenhlangano ikhutsate emave kutsi nawo afike kulesigaba lesi kuze kutawukhuphuka umkhicito wekudla kunciphe nelinani lalaba kudzingile.
Live leSwatini livetwe njengalamanye lasebentisa sikali lesingiso ekulimeni lokungu-50 kg wamanyolo emhlabatsini lolinganiselwa ku-1 hectare. Lesi sikali baholi bemave ase-Afrika labavumelana ngaso. Lovulelo mhlangano ucele emave kutsi akhumbule lakutsembisa ngetindzaba tekusebentisa umhlaba ngendlela lengiyo.
Then there is another declaration in June 2014. African leaders declared their commitment to end hunger in Africa by 2025. That is next year. The declaration on accelerated agricultural growth and transformation for shared prosperity and improved livelihoods focused on accelerating agricultural growth by at least doubling current agricultural production levels by the year.
Ndvuna yetekulima umhlonishwa Amandla Chauka itsi leSwatini lisebente ngekutikhandla nekubambisana kuze lente kahle noko tikhona tinsayeya.
As a country, we still face challenges like importing all our fertilizers from outside the country. This subjects us to shocks of events that happen outside the borders, like the Russia-Ukraine conflict, which brought around hyperinflation and energy supply of fertilizers. We therefore extend our invitation to the future of investors in this sector to come and start fertilizing professional plants in the country. I do need to state that Eswatini is open for business.
Tindvuna tembuso kulomhlangano tivetile kutsi kufanele kutholakale indlela yekutsi manyolo akhiwe emaveni akulelivekati kuze utawushipha. Letindvuna tincome nekutsi kufunwe tindlela tekuhlanganisa manyolo wesilungu newesintfu kuze kutawuncipha kutsenga kodwa nekudla kube kwanza. Ndzabeni Eswatini TV kubika Themkosi Mavimbela eNairobi, Kenya.
Temakhono tingilenye tindlela letimcoka tekhambisa imilayeto yekuletha kuthula inhlalakahle kanye nentuthuko eveni. Lokhu kusho ngilokuchumanisa tinhlelo takamhlabhlangene kuleli UNDP George Washira nakasokumisa tinhlelo letitawuchutshwa tinhlangano takamhlaba ngekubambisana neBushfire Festival lapho titawube ticokisana nesive ngenhloso yekutfola tisombululo etinhlangothini letehlukene letikhatsata umhlaba. Lokufaka ekhatsi tekuhlukubetana ngetebulili tekungatfoli imisebenti kwalabasha temfundvo kanye nalokunye.
Inhlangano yakamhlabhlangene seyibambisene nemcimbi webushfire iminyaka lemibili kanti lo nyaka itocala ibe netinkhulumiswano nebafundzi bemanyuvesi akuleli.
We have been reminded several times that our world stands at the crossroads, faced with multiple crises that actually threaten the very fabric of our existence. And this is not an exaggeration. From escalating poverty, disease outbreaks, that the pandemic that we had and still lingers on in terms of its impacts, and suggestions that that is not the last pandemic we're going to see, climate disruptions, that are impacting food security, as we've talked about. All these things, including the fact that we have actually regressed in terms of the SDGs. We thought we were doing so well until COVID hit. Throughout the festival, we're going to be using this particular platform to reach our target audiences with key messages on the various SDGs. And these messages, as we did last year, learning and improving from last year, these messages are going to be reinforced by the MCs that are going to be presiding over them, and also the artists' performances.
Umcondzisi wemcimbi we-Bushfire Festival Jigston uthi njengoba lo mcimbi ukhanga abathanzi bemculo labasuka mhlaba wonke bakubona kokuhle ukuthi uphindze ufundise ngetimo letikhungethe live kanye nemhlaba wonke.
And we came up with the call to action, or the tagline, "Bring your fire." Bring Your Fire speaks to a collective response for positive social change. And we were very clear that we wanted Bushfire to be that platform. That it could be a platform where we could harness the arts to engage a range of issues.
Kulo mcimbi inhlangano yakamhlabuhlangene yethulela isheke letinkulungwane letingemakhulu lamathathu nemashumi lamabili nesihlanu temalangeni lekuyimali yekuchuba lo msebenzi. Kanti bafundzi bemanyuvesi akuleli labatawungenela letinkulumiswano batawuba sethubeni lekukhumula imathikithi ekungenela lo mcimbi we-Bushfire Festival. Etindzabeni ngombongwa Dube kumahlanya.
Until Shumina kunye kulenyanga letako basolwa lababili lekungdelight moyo kanye nangosinathi Mboneni Izwane batawukwati ukuthi yatawucala nini kutekwa emacala abo lababhekene nawo lafaka ekhathe kukhwabanisela litiwo letasekhaya kubheke ukuthi ngalolu suku labamelele umbuso kanye nebameli bebasolwa bavumelane ngemalanga ekutekwa emacala labomsolwa.
Emacala lababhekene nawo labasolwa lokungdelight moyo kanye nankosinathi Mboneni Izwane afaya ekhathe kukhwabanise kweba kanye nekushushumbisa imali money laundering. Abasolwa bavele enkantolo kaMantshi ngalesibili ekseni bavele embi kwaMantshi lomkhulu waseMbabane ifikile Nhlabathi nabavela labasolwa bebakathe bamelele bameli babo lababili labehlukene. Moyo beyakathe amelele ngummeli wakhe Sivesonke Ngwenya kanye Izwane bemelele ngummeli wakhe Osborne Zima. Moyo waboshwe egedeni eNgwenya wavela enkantolo nathi 14 enyangeni yeNdlovu lenkulu kulomnyaka losetulu. Zwane wavela enkantolo enyangeni lephelile ngemva kwekuboshwa. Moyo usolwa ngokuthi nguyele bekasebenzisana naZwane. Moyo welive leseZimbabwe loneminyaka lengama42 yena ubhekene namacala ali11 sekawonke. Layimfice kukhwabanisa amabili ekweba bese linye kulelo kwephula umthetho lwale nkohlakalo. Zwane ulisekela lobuke kungeyane kuphuma emahekeni kuleli kani ubekwe emacala ngama25 lafaya ekhathe kukhwabanisa ekweba kanye nekushushumbisa imali money laundering. Esicolweni sekutukela ngephandle lasifaya enkantolo lenkulu owaphika wonke lamacala labekwe wona. Zwane loneminyaka lengama40 wendzawo yaseMoneni ubekwe emacala ekukhwabanisa lali10 ekweba lasihlanu bese lekushushumbisa imali liba linye. Umbuso kuleli cala umelele umshushisi Chris Banze. Tindzabeni kubika Fortune Dlangamandla isenkantolo kaMantshi eMbabane.
Ijiko letemfundvo lisemkhankasweni wekucinisa lihlangothi lwete-science netemnjinela ngekuthi tifundvo tihambisane netidzingo letisombulula tinkinga letikhona emhlabeni. Ngekusho kwemholi wete-science itiko letemfundvo Phumlile Dlamini, itiko letimisele kwesekela abafundzi ngendlela lebhekekile. Ukuthi bafundzi bakuleli lese bayile kuyogcugcelana kulamanye emave kunyenti labakufundzile lese kulese kuthuthuka lokutsite kulendlela abafundzi abatimisela ngayo nalabacabanga ngayo.
Artificial intelligence, sikhuluma ngema-robotics. Intfo leto lesisengene kuto kancane ngala ka-science. But sisebenta towards lokuthi asikutfole lokunye kwaletinfo kungene kule curriculum. Sisasebenta towards modifying our curriculum to align with the current trends. Sisengakakubambi kakhulu, but we are trying means to rope in other people to assist us ukuthi asifike phela nathi kulama trends la khona nyalo. We do have groups lenda ema robotics, artificial intelligence sengafiki but kuze sifike kahle lapho kufuna singene kakhudlwana kuma issues engineering. Sinetihlobo le sasicatfulisa kuse how do we get there? Maybe sitawugcina sinato tikolo letitsi asesifundise nje engineering noma sibe ne curriculum le aka science le academic but siphinde sibe nayo le part yoku orienta umfana kuma engineering skills. Sisashoda ngale part yaka engineering ku curriculum yethu in general. Lokusho ukuthi siyadzinga kakhulu lokuthi sibatfole labo labangasita ukuthi iscience isebenta la nala baphinze basibambise ukuthi labantu bafethu babe exposed. Engcenye lomnye angathi ngide imali yokuthi ngibasponsorishe bente something like equilibrium, but lokuthi nakuvalwe isikolo usasebete basebesebente la batobona lokuthi le science labayifundzako akusiyo nje into yokuthi angiphase esikoleni kwenqe, but science is about solving everyday life problems. Sisebentise le knowledge lesifundzile ukuthi sichache inkinga lesingabhekana nato ekuphileni kwethu. So when they get to South Africa bafike bakhona ukubona ukuthi science can be used to do a lot of things. Labangakhona nabo kubona ukuthi nasi kukhona lesingakwenda asikapheleli. So it gives them the opportunity ukuthi open their eyes babone more of the applications of science. Kungasiko lokho kuphela ke bese bayabakhipha labantwana ukhanze sibahamba baya sightsee babuke lokho ukuthi kunani babakhombise letinto letentiwa ngekusebenzisa iscience.
Umndeni uhlukene ekhathi kulandzela ukuthi imunye walabo bebabuke kwabiwa kwelifa athengise ingcenye yeliplazi ngemali le-1.5 million emalangeni bese akasabanike bonke lekumele bazuze. Lokungaboni ngasolinye kwamalunga lomndeni sekubanga ukuthi kungafike emaphethelweni kwabiwa kwalelifa ngemuva kweminyaka lengama-20.
Leli plazi lomndeni longavumelani ngekulithengisa lisendzaweni yaseligaganeni. Leli plazi libita imali engu-3.8 million emalangeni. Kunendzawo lenetindlu lekucashisa kamanzini lekumele itfole indvodzana yemufi iTezi Kunene. Lelifa lelibangwa lemufi Titus Kunene lowashona ngeminyaka wa-2003. Bekete umfati anebantfwana labalishumi-3. Njengaloku bayakathatha umfati bantfwana bakubo labane nabo kumele bazuze kulelifa lakhe. Desire kumelelwe ngummeli Isidumo Mdladla ekwabiweni kwalelifa.
I had to make sure. That's why I was saying it should be transferred into a trust. We're going to know who the trustee is. We know that she's the beneficiary. The actual sale, the sale, the price was for 3.5 million, but the amount paid was less than 1.5. And in terms of the deed of sale, that amount was to be paid to the conveyancers.
Umnaka bomufi Ellen Kunene lobuye kwabiwa kwalelifa uchaza ngekungavumelani lokukhona.
Lapha bathola laba labafunwa ngilakhe. Abatholanga lalabanye bantwana. Sesingena njani ke thina sihambe sewulanza tinkinga tamota Moses nalakhe le sibuye sitodifaka la ngoba thina ngasasebenda lokwethu. Sakuyekela lokwakwabo. Babetawubonana bona bodvana.
Bantwana bemufi baveta imivo yabo leyahlukahlukene.
Ngeke understand ukuthi le estate in 68 million ngoba kukhona le letinto langadadi kunema properties la seJozi Titus Kunene abhaliswe ngaSimphiwe Kunene kuneliplazi leli Samuel Alunzi kunemahulumba kumanangizana bomathapha athengiswa but thina imali asathi thina ukuthi Desri umele ngiretrocase from 2003 kunemali lebese litfola kuthiwa iyakudesri but Desri akamelwa ngumdladla but umdladla ukule estate kepha akafanele ukusinga kule estate.
So there's a huge discourse between Emma beneficiaries A2, Emma executors A2, which has resulted largely in 20 years, 2003. We can say it all, but there's no reason 20 years later we're still talking about the estate now.
Sesize siyazondana mina nje athi ngalokuthi emgcwabeni ngiyaya ngigcina emgcwabeni ngesabe ngisho kumvuselela wakunene kodwa ngiyathi umkhulisile nganayo imali nayo lese besicela mina nje vele ngidoqela isicelo sami besolo sikumaster ukuthi manje siyacela ukuthi celani imali enigoqode kuphele nangabe kanjani umuntu ahamba ayofela yedwa lekhashana.
Bokhomishana bekhomishana lephinya tinsolo tekungaphatheki kahle kwemafa ofisini la kaMaster baluleka lo mndeni ngakunene ukuthi bangayicatulula kanjani lenzaba yekwabiwa kwalelifa.
Mangakhona ukuhlangana imindeni impela kulukhulu ngathi nathi sayihlanganisa ngenkani kodwa ke nani intithobe bokumele anti uma bethi imhlangano nabeke phasi inhlitiyo ente njani andani bete nonke ngoba bekanibita nonke niba lenkulumo mhlambe ngabasikho nasikhona
1.5 kusho umsile nishiwe lakhe ethathe lokho okugcodwa estate bese lisukela lakhe langabe lakhe athole kakhulu kulo 1.5 lamusha ngaphandle kokuthi nadi as executors.
Kuyengandolo niyo reverse the thing is going to be costly. For starters, there's now a third party that has acquired the property and it on. If we are told 1.5 million, do we know what's Waniga Bobani or Waniga E? Then you want to say, then perhaps you want to say, yini singa from this final distribution amounts no 1.5 million. Each. At least I think that will take.
Bebakatse babathathu bande babuye kwabiwa kwalelifa kodwa babili babo sebabeka phansi laba kufaya ikhathi lakhe kunene losolwa ngekuthengisa lengcenye yeliplazi kanti lomunye lobeke phansi kumele isidumo umdladla lobeke phansi ngenyanga yendlovana kulomnyaka losetulu indzabeni kubika Fortune dlanga amandla ngisembabane.
This Mother's Day, celebrate the one who's always been there for you. From May 7 to May 11, show your love and appreciation with the heartfelt gifts delivered right to her door. With Eswatini Post's Eswatini delivery service, sending your love is easier than ever. For just 50 emalangeni, will ensure your gift reaches your mom within the Mbabane to Manzini corridor. Make this Mother's Day unforgettable. Send your love with Eswatini delivery service.
Kwezemidlalo, umengameli wenhlangano emidlalo we-rugby kuleli bandile velakade uthi imicutholano yema-7 aside yakuleli lechubekako kubobabe kanye nabomake idlala indima lenkulu ekuthuthukiseni lo mdlalo. Uthi ungakapheli lo mnyaka lenhlangano itawubamba imicuthelwano nalamanye emave esifundza lesisendasi nelivekati le-Afrika lokutawubanika sithombe sokuthi basebente kanganani ekuthuthukiseni lo mdlalo kuleli.
Siyabona ukuthi standard silo sinako uku-improve njengoba labanye nje bengabe baqala ukudlala bekukhona lokho ukuthi nabo basazama evikini lekucala ukuthi mhlambe bathi ku catch up to labo labangathi mhlambe basembidlana kunabo but ke namhla siyabona lokuthi banako kulingana lokuthide ngemidlalo ngestandard semidlalo wabo. I-point system isita ekuthenini lemidlalo iba miningi ngoba abasiko ema-group bayi-group yinye kuba i-round robin batawudlala until evikini lesithathu lokusho ukuthi lemidlalo itabe yanzile ngaleso sikhathi nabo ke kuyabaniketa-ke ukuthi bo-coach mhlambe lababukile banikete lithuba lekuthi seminingi or maybe imidlalo abayidlalile badlali ithe kwanza so kuyakuniketa nawe lithuba lokuthi noma ngabe bowuta ngemuva kancane ugcine nawo catch upile ugcine nawo improvile throughout the series so kuye kube i-format lengathi i-league of some sort lokuthi kudlala lama games abe maningi kulama viki ladlalayo ngoba kule level abadlala kiyo nyalo stage lesitawulandzela kutaba ngobo coach njengoba nje bakhona la so lobasibukele imidlalo bo head coach kuba khona i-possibility ukuthi kukhethwe noma kumbe kubuke labo labangaba se-groupini lapho kuhlengwa khona licembu lesive bese ngafisa kuba nayo imidlalo etinyangeni letitako nalabakhona kumakhelwane bethu labafaka ikhathi iBotswana iMozambique lekusaneti ingcoco letikhona ukuthi singaba nayo imidlalo letawuzama ukuthi improve emakhethelo ethu awo lamave kuwo ema-sevens.
Ngaleto temidlalo sibeke lapho tindzaba tetfu tesiswati sibangakhohlalisana nathi sithatha salikhefu sibe sichubeke nehlelo hlala nathi.
Be sure to catch Business Watch every Wednesday between 2 p.m. to 3 p.m., where we feature the latest updates on business news, market trends, and exclusive interviews with industry leaders, as well as insights on emerging small and medium enterprises in the commercial sector. Business Watch, your business leader.
It's 32 minutes after 6. We'll come back to the program. Discover the crucial link between water, peace, and prosperity with Richard Corner, who is the editor-in-chief of the United Nations World Water Development Report at UNESCO. Corner highlights the vital role of safe water and sanitation in ensuring health, education, as well as livelihoods. Now join us as we emphasize the importance of prioritizing access to clean water for a brighter future.
Well, I'm Richard Connor, and I'm editor-in-chief of the United Nations World Water Development Report. There's a lot of little complicated links between water, peace, and prosperity. Let's start with prosperity. The first most obvious is probably water and sanitation. Without safe water and safe sanitation, you've got health risks. From health risks bring an inability to go to school, so you've got problems with education, and of course you've got inability to go to work. If you can't go to work, then your whole livelihoods are at stake and things like that. But the relationship with prosperity goes beyond just jobs and employment and things like that, because you think about a nation or a community's electricity supply. You can't really have electricity without water for the most part. If you're coal-based, thermal-based, you need water for your cooling systems. Of course, you need water for food security. It's not just about feeding people, but just think about the jobs that are involved with agriculture. Of course, if you need water to grow food, but if you've got a drought or something like that, and you're not growing food, so then the farmers don't have jobs. But if the farmers don't have jobs, neither do the person that drives the truck from the farm to the market, the people that work in the market, the people in the bank that are dealing with the loans and the savings of the farmers. So the repercussions on water and prosperity are absolutely huge and across the board. It's kind of difficult to figure out how water and water scarcity can lead to tensions and disputes. Basically, the whole idea of water stress or water scarcity is a combination of how much water you need, or demand, if you will, and how much water is available. And you can't really change much about what's available. So stress or tensions or disputes are really over different groups or users that have different demands. Negotiation is pretty much the only solution. Now, you've got technical solutions, but then usually technical solutions have costs. Just think about irrigation efficiency. Irrigation uses 70% of the world's water. Now, improvements in irrigation can really remove demand or lessen demand from agriculture, which makes more water available. But who is going to pay for this additional efficiency from the farmers? Well, how about the cities or the communities that need to benefit, that will receive more water? Well, if they contribute to the efficiency for agriculture, then it's a win-win situation. So this is the type of sort of peaceful, democratic, and open, transparent approach that is essential to the whole UN approach to water and water governance. when you're looking at water scarcity or water stress, you're really looking at the difference between water availability and how much water that that the different users in a community in an area need. And the closer you are to to maximizing the water available, then the closer you're going to get to tensions. Very often, worldwide, agriculture uses 7% of water. So, of course, efficiencies in irrigation can really improve water availability for other users. But if you're approaching a limit to water availability, if you're getting towards extreme stress, you're bound to have disputes among those that have been using this water for a long time and whose demands are increasing. For the most part, agriculture demand is not increasing, but cities are growing really rapidly. And to maintain water supply and sanitation services, that means that their demand for water is really increasing, and they have to get it somewhere. So invariably, tensions are going to grow between the municipalities and the farmer groups. But there's ways around that, and that is for the municipalities themselves to help and to assist and to support the farmers in increasing their efficiency so they don't use as much water. And then that's the best way to relieve tensions without any conflict or... but of course, you need to have, the best thing to do is to have the institutions, you need some sort of the equivalent of a judge or a jury or something like that to balance, to make sure that one party doesn't take advantage of the other and that there's transparency and that there's no corruption in the system. It's estimated that half the world's population lives in countries that suffer from pretty high levels of water scarcity at least 1 month a year. And this is probably going to get worse with respect to climate change. Now, with climate change, generally and very generally, wet places are going to get wetter and dry areas are going to get drier. Just because a wet area will get wetter, that is a yearly average. You have to look at seasonality, because if you get all of your rain over a 3-day period, the rest of the year you're going to be suffering water scarcity. There's no two ways around it. It's all about storage. You have to find ways to store water when it's available. And you basically have two options. One is surface storage, which is quite expensive, and it's a dam and dams and reservoirs. And one of the big disadvantages to that is that the surface of the water is exposed to the atmosphere, and so the water evaporates. So it's not the most effective system. The most effective system is to use groundwater. Is to actually use the soil and the upper parts of the Earth's crust to store water. We've been using groundwater as a source of water, extracting it. 25% of all the water we use in the world is from groundwater, but we haven't been properly using that groundwater to store water. And it's not like this complicated pumping system or anything like that. This has to do with less pavement and more surface areas where water can simply be naturally absorbed back into the ground. And the other advantage to groundwater is there's no evaporation. And it also, the soil, the whole process has actually helped clean the water. So it's an absolute win-win. And this is UNESCO 2 years ago had a big conference on groundwater. And our report 2 years ago was also about groundwater. So I'm bringing this back because it's really a big solution that is still under considered. Through the 80s and 90s, it was said and said again. It was pretty common knowledge or a common statement that the next century's wars are going to be about or over water. we're very lucky to say that this has not been happening. The conflicts over water, violent conflicts, tend to be local in nature and between, different user groups. From the national security aspect, water has been much more an element or a conduit of peace than it has been for conflict. And in fact, the whole idea of conflicts over water, the term in this report because conflict has a connotation of violence, and there's not that much, direct major violence over water. We're talking about disputes, you talk about tensions. Water is, however, a victim of war, and people are victimized by war through water. The international human rights law, including the Geneva Convention, specifically prohibit any attacks on civilian infrastructure, including water systems. And so this is something that the international community can very much push and make sure that it's clear. The other things that the international community can do is promote transboundary water management, which promotes peace and shared resources between countries. And the final one is the human rights, recognizing the human rights to water and sanitation, and to make sure that these human rights are maintained in all situations, including conflict situations. The Sustainable Development Goals and SDG 6 in particular, the Sustainable Development Goal on water, for the most part, its targets are not going to be reached at current levels. So progress needs to be accelerated. Political will is probably the number one aspect, and that requires recognizing the importance of water in terms of prosperity and in terms of peace. But that also means financing. You can recognize that the importance of water supply and sanitation, how it's safe and how it helps health and promotes, well-being. But where the progress is the most needed is on sanitation. And that's because it seems there's a view that receiving water at home is more important than what happens when you pull the tap or pull the plug. But the reality is the impacts on human health and the environment from untreated sanitation are absolutely huge. 80% of the world's domestic wastewater is released to the environment without any treatment. This has repercussions on ecosystem health, human health, and then it's important for decision makers, but also people that you and I, people that are lucky enough to live in a democracy and actually can vote, to make sure that the people that we are voting to understand the importance of water and of water supply and sanitation, so that we do hit the targets of SDG 6. The theme of this year's World Water Day is Water for Peace. The World Water Development Report, published by UNESCO, is focusing on water for prosperity and peace. Now, the common term is peace and prosperity, but there's a reason we went for prosperity and peace. Because we honestly believe that by using water to build prosperity, and that means prosperity through sharing water's benefits, health, employment, education, food, energy, and ecosystems, all of these benefits lead to prosperity. And by learning to better share these benefits, that will lead to peace. So in other words, when it comes to water, sharing absolutely is caring.
Yeah, and that's it. We'll go for a net break. Sita Okusana Nahlengiwe of the Examinations Council of Eswatini after that break.
Kude lesinye isikhathi ngaphandle kwalesi.
Aba research bafunze.
Being risky means ukuthi nalokuwa kwayo kulula.
Nathi kufuna sente ukukhicita lokusemndeni.
All right, 14 minutes before 7 this morning. Welcome back to the program. I'm speaking to Hlengiwe Ndlovu now, who joins me in studio. She's the Communications Officer of the Examinations Council of Eswatini, popularly known as EKESWA, with the 14th Southern Africa Association for Educational Assessment Conference just around the corner. It is being hosted by EKESWA, by the way. Ms. Ndlovu will provide insights into the upcoming event, as well as the critical role educational assessment plays in shaping the future of education in Southern Africa. Hlengiwe, welcome to the studio. You are no stranger to the viewers' ears, especially if like Eswatini TV. But outside man, but that's a topic for another day. Welcome back. Really happy to have you on the show. Kubuka nje nangomsebenzi lomkhulu kangaka ngisho ukuthi ingca isivele engabe what is the significance that this conference holds, particularly in the context of educational assessment in Southern Africa and Eswatini?
First of all, morning, Sfiso, and morning to our viewers at home. Before going any further, maybe one should explain the acronym SAIA. Like you've aptly said, it's the Southern Africa Association for Educational Assessment. This is a confederation of 10 member countries comprising of 11 countries comprising of 10 examining boards. The confederation was formed in 2011, and it serves as the perfect arena for examining boards to discuss and engage on pertinent issues occurring in the assessment space. The conference comes to Eswatini at a time when, take for instance, the Examinations Council of Eswatini was recently transformed into a parastatal by the EKESWA Act of 2023. The conference then comes at a critical time during the transition period of EKESWA. The other significance of this conference is that it comes at a time when Eswatini is undergoing crucial, significant educational reforms. For instance, the Ministry of Education and Training is piloting the lower checkpoint assessment program. This is actually an assessment whereby students will sit for a checkpoint exam in Form 2 instead of Form 3. This program is being piloted in 32 schools. So the conference comes at a time when educators, that's teachers, head teachers in schools, are also impacted by such reforms. So the conference has great significance for Eswatini, not just for Eswatini, but for the other examining boards, as there are many contemporary issues that should be engaged on and discussed.
Maybe a bit of clarity on the lower checkpoint assessment. Something that's new. I didn't go through it. You certainly didn't go through it yourself. Does that mean we don't have Form 3 anymore if that is implemented?
It's actually a pilot program.
Yes.
It's a pilot program, and that is 32 schools.
Okay.
So the conference comes at a time when some candidates will be assessed at Form 2 instead of Form 3. Actually, the first cohort of checkpoint candidates were actually assessed last year.
Wow.
So the conference comes at a time when the Ministry of Education is actually piloting this program.
And just between me and you, maybe and the viewers, because since we're here already, if I do exceptionally well on that assessment, I get the leeway to go to Form 4.
Yes,
wow,
absolutely.
It's very interesting.
So the conference, the SAIA conference, comes at a time when Eswatini is exploring significant educational reforms.
Yeah, and it is indeed significant. Let's talk about the theme. Really interested on the theme because I feel like I really resonate with it. Transforming educational assessment for quality, equality, and fairness in the fourth industrial revolution, and that is where I become super interested. How do you see this theme addressing the evolving needs of educational assessment in the region?
That's a great question, Sifiso. Actually, the theme acknowledges that we live in an era of the fourth industrial revolution. And obviously, the fourth industrial revolution affects all sectors of society, including education and the assessment space. The theme acknowledges that we're living in an era of super intelligent machines. The digital space is also growing massively. So much as we have this great technological advancements occurring in our time, but the theme speaks to candidates being afforded quality education still in the space, and all candidates having equal access to the examinations despite the fourth industrial revolution.
Yeah, and it's quite critical, especially equality. And equality has been, the topic of conversation across all sectors, and I'm glad it's something that you guys will be addressing as well during the conference. The sub-themes now is something I want us to get into, which cover other aspects such as risk management, also covers emerging trends, cost-effective measures, and competency-based education. Ngabe kusi unpackela what these sub-themes mean, and how do you believe is the most critical theme out of all of these in the current educational landscape?
Sifiso, I personally believe all these sub-themes are important. Okay. When we speak of risk management is a great topic of discussion among examining boards, especially those in the SAIA Confederation. For instance, Eswatini last year had the unfortunate experience of a massive examination leak whereby Ekeswa was propelled to order a reset examination for the 2023 EGCSE examination. Issues of risk, those are very important and critical in the assessment space as examining boards, not just EKESWA, but other examining boards are grappling with issues of minimizing risks in the assessment space. Because, Sifiso, our qualifications are akin to currency. There should be no cloud of doubt over our qualifications. If you hold the EGCSE certificate, you should be competitive in the world out there. Nobody should be doubting that qualification. So we have to minimize any kind of risk that could cause doubt on our qualifications as SAIA member countries. Other themes speak to emerging trends, cost effectiveness. With cost effectiveness, you will recall that the Ministry of Education and Training and all other players in the education sector advocate for access, easy access to education and the examinations. So as examining bodies, we thrive to minimize cost by all means in producing our examinations so that our examinations are easily accessible to all candidates, despite the background, the socio-economic background. The other themes speak to competency-based education systems, sustainable measures for quality and fair assessments. All these themes are especially significant in these times that we live in.
And they're quite interrelated because you had already touched on the competency-based education when you spoke on the first one, which is risk management. I do see how they are all interrelated. Absolutely. I want us to talk about the best practices that you will be focusing on. I've heard that it's going to be a key focus in Zabayama, sharing of best practices. What are some of the key initiatives or practices maybe that EKESWA has implemented over the years, or let's say in recent years really, to enhance educational assessment standards?
EKESWA is working very hard to ensure that we explore the best practices possible. For instance, in recent years, we have explored the use of innovations such as e-marking, for instance. E-marking has to do with our markers not converging in a physical location, but remotely marking examination scripts. However, we're exploring the use of such technologies. We are also in the process of implementing a system. It's called an item banking system This is a highly digitalized system, question paper development system, which will enable our subject specialists to digitally develop question papers, store them in a secure bank, a secure bank with elaborate security features. This bank of question papers could come in handy in situations such as receipts, examinations, and other circumstances.
And while we may attribute that to the fourth industrial revolution, we do also want to say the advent of the COVID-19 pandemic also played quite a huge role in making sure that we speed our, to adopt such innovations. Last question. I've been advised we really have to end our conversation now. Looking beyond the conference, what are ECASWA's long-term goals and initiatives to continue advancing the quality of education, of fairness of educational assessment in Eswatini? Just briefly.
Sifiso and our viewers at home, ECASWA's key focus right now is on establishing solid partnerships with key stakeholders and partners in the SAIA space, not only in SAIA but also in the Africa education space and internationally. The partnerships are so key for us, especially in the SAIA space, where for a long time SAIA member countries have been toying with the idea of establishing their own accreditation body. You may recall that currently most countries in the SAIA space are being accredited by international accreditors, and this comes at a huge cost for the examining boards in the space. So we're looking at forging very solid partnerships to ensure that we have our own accreditation body in the Southern Africa region. This will help to minimize the costs, the money that is being spent on international accreditors. That's the way forward.
In 11 countries, I'm sure that is going to be fostered indeed during this conference. The 14th Southern Africa Association for Educational Assessment Conference. Really looking forward to the many fruits that will be reaped from this conference.
Are you ready to own your future? Boto University Eswatini campus is proud to announce a golden opportunity for aspiring students.
I am more convinced that this is the best university on the face of the planet.
Boto University Eswatini is fully registered and accredited by Eswatini Higher Education Council and has opened doors to offer enrollment for government-sponsored students. At Boto University, we believe in empowering minds, nurturing talents, and shaping the architects of a future prosperous Eswatini.
We produce quality graduates who propagate the growth and development of our region.
With our world-class faculty and cutting-edge resources with international partnership and student exchange program, you'll receive an education that goes beyond textbooks. Boto University offers a 4-year bachelor's degree in business, accounting, computing, mobile computing and network security and computer forensics, as well as health information management.
Boto University.
Vibrance.
Innovation.
Impact.
Be sure to catch Business Watch every Wednesday between 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. where we feature the latest updates on business news, market trends, and exclusive interviews with industry leaders, as well as insights on emerging small and medium enterprises in the commercial sector. Business Watch, your business leader.
Ujala masada mahle kunathi lesa.
Sabatandi ukuthi njengalokhu sifile sive sikhulume.
It's 7 a.m. Welcome back. This is the international news at 7. Thousands of Israelis rallied around the country calling for an immediate deal to release the hostages still held in the Gaza Strip. The protests came as Israel's war cabinet voted to begin an operation on the city of Rafah, saying that a ceasefire proposal Hamas accepted earlier in the night was not in line with Israeli demands.
Frustration on the streets of Tel Aviv as the Israeli government says no to a ceasefire proposal. Families of hostages determined to ramp up pressure on the government joined protests calling for more to be done to release their loved ones.
We're here to tell our government that we won't stop until they will bring everybody home now. They need to bring them home in a deal and end all the suffering and agony.
The uproar comes after Hamas gave the green light to the deal mediated by Egypt and Qatar. The offer would see a truce take place in multiple stages, starting with the release of some of the hostages and partial Israeli troop pullbacks within Gaza. Israel says the terms are far from its core demands and has long insisted that it will not remove boots from the ground as it continues to hunt down Hamas militants. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is now set to send a negotiating team to Egypt to discuss an agreement.
We examine every response very seriously, and we review every possibility on the issue of negotiations and the return of the hostages to their homes as quickly as possible, as a central task.
The Israeli military says it will continue its ground invasion of Rafah, thought to be Hamas's last stronghold in Gaza. Earlier, the city was the scene of celebrations over the news of a potential ceasefire deal. Now, with no pact in sight, the excitement seems premature. Israel is warning 100,000 Palestinians to evacuate eastern neighborhoods in Rafah. The UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres says the looming invasion would be intolerable for some 1.4 million Palestinians taking refuge in the city.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the military's capture of the Gaza side of the Rafah crossing is an important step towards dismantling Hamas military and economic capabilities.
Less than 24 hours after Palestinians celebrated what some believed was a deal reached between Israel and Hamas, the Israeli army pushes through with its operations in Rafah, where the UN estimates up to 1.5 million people are sheltering from the war. Israel's ground forces took control of the Gaza side of the Rafah crossing, which leads to Egypt, after crossing along the Philadelphia corridor, 14-kilometre strip of land serving as a buffer zone between the enclave and Egypt, guaranteed by the Israeli-Egyptian Peace Treaty of 1979.
I don't think Israel will approve the deal. Israel doesn't care about us or our children. Israel only cares about its own people, and Netanyahu only cares about being at the top. He doesn't care about the children.
As volatile ceasefire negotiations continue between the two sides, an Israeli government spokesperson said Hamas can end the conflict by surrendering.
This afternoon, before we here in Israel put our kids to bed, and the way it could end is quite simple. If Hamas lay down their arms and release our hostages, that is the way for this conflict to end. Hamas need to lay down their arms and give us back our hostages. That is the way for this conflict to end. Anything else where Hamas remains in power is simply not an option for Israel.
The Rafah crossing is strategically important because it is the main route for aid entering the enclave and the exit for those who are able to flee to Egypt.
The world is watching students on the United States college campuses protest Israel's conduct in the war in Gaza. Global reactions to the demonstrations, including to students' arrests, vary from pride and solidarity to alarm and condemnation.
Columbia University in New York City has been the epicenter of pro-Palestinian protests that have spread across America. Students are calling on their universities to disclose and then divest all of their funds related to Israel and to end all academic partnerships with Israel. They are also calling on the United States to stop sending military aid to Israel. The protests are now spreading elsewhere in the world, including demonstrations Tuesday at Berlin's Free University in Germany. Students in Germany, France, the United Kingdom, as well as in Gaza, have praised the American protests. Iran has criticized the police crackdown on some campuses, with Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei tweeting out his support for U.S. students.
Some of the key adversaries of the United States around the world, the likes of Russia, China, Iran, are trying to use these protest movements to really raise more fundamental question about the health of the American democracy and such issues as whether America is what it claims to be.
One university in Iran even offered to take in expelled American students or any fired professors, though the Middle East Institute's Alex Vatanka told VOA he does not expect there to be a rush of U.S. college students buying plane tickets to Tehran. Another expert at the University of Chicago says he does not believe the protests will have the staying power of the massive U.S. student demonstrations against the Vietnam War in the late 1960s.
Even though these are organic and even though these are people who care deeply about this issue, by and large, this is not as salient of an issue for large segments of the U.S. population, in the same way that the Vietnam War with the draft, for example.
Chinese leaders have been largely silent on the protest. On a recent visit to China, where anti-government protests are strictly banned, Secretary of State Antony Blinken praised the campus protests.
And in our own country, it's a hallmark of our democracy that our citizens make known their views, their concerns, their anger at any given time.
But Blinken again criticized the silence of protesters about the militant group Hamas, saying they should stop hiding behind civilians, release the hostages they are holding, and lay down their arms to save Palestinian civilians.
Ukraine announced that it had detained 2 Ukrainian security officials in a plot coordinated by Russia to assassinate senior Ukrainian officials, including President Volodymyr Zelensky.
Russian insiders, Ukraine's secret service, claims were plotting to kill Volodymyr Zelensky. Among those detained were 2 colonels from the Department of the State Protection of Ukraine, accused of divulging classified information to Russia.
The network, whose activities were overseen by the FSB from abroad, included 2 UDO colonels who leaked secret information to the Russian Federation. Thus, the enemy was actively developing plans to eliminate President Volodymyr Zelensky. One of the most important tasks of the FSB agent network was to find officials among the military close to the president who could take the head of state hostage and later kill him.
Targets they plan to assassinate also include the head of the SBU and the head of the GUR, Ukraine's military intelligence. According to the SBU, the operatives intended to monitor and relay the movements of their targets to enable precision rocket attacks on their locations, followed by drone strikes to eliminate survivors and erase any evidence of the operation.
Vladimir Putin began his 5th term as Russian leader at a glittering Kremlin inauguration, setting out on another 6 years in office after destroying his political opponents.
A familiar red carpet walk for Russian President Vladimir Putin as a long and elaborate inauguration ceremony kicked off his latest 6-year term after almost a quarter of a century in power. Putin used the first moments of his new term to thank the soldiers fighting in his invasion of Ukraine.
I want to bow before our heroes, the participants of the special military operation, a low bow to all those who fight.
Putin won re-election last month by a record 87% in a tightly controlled election from which 2 anti-war candidates were barred, described as a sham by exiled opposition figures. The US, the UK, Canada and most EU nations boycotted the swearing-in by not sending their ambassadors. Putin now dominates Russian politics even more than he did at his last inauguration 6 years ago. Leading opposition figures are in prison or exile, and leading critic Alexei Navalny died in prison in February. His widow Yulia Navalnaya called on supporters to keep up the fight.
We must make sure that no one in the world believes Putin, either in Russia or outside its borders. It's difficult, but we have to try, and that means persistent, stubborn, daily work. Our country is now ruled by a liar, a thief, and a murderer.
In 2020, Putin made changes to the constitution which allow for him to stay in power until 2036.
Donald Trump returns to his hush money trial on Tuesday, facing a threat of jail time for additional gag order violating as prosecutors gear up to summon big-name witnesses in the final weeks of the case.
Donald Trump has accomplished many firsts during his public life. Now you can add being the first former president directly threatened with jail time at his criminal trial. At issue, the former president's continued violation of a gag order, which he railed against again Monday morning just outside the courtroom.
The judge is totally conflicted, and you ought to take a look at it. And I'm not supposed to be talking about it. But I am allowed to say that the judge has a conflict that like nobody's ever had before. You ought to take a look at it.
This is the second time Judge Juan Merchan has found Trump in contempt for violating the order, which bars the former president from speaking out publicly about witnesses, jurors, court staff, and their families. With the fines of $1,000 per violation having no apparent effect, in court the judge addressed Trump directly, saying, "This court will have to consider a jail sanction. At the end of the day, I have a job to do. Part of that job is to protect the dignity of the justice system." The judge adding, "The last thing I want to do is put you in jail. You are the former president of the United States and possibly the next president as well." Trump, who had no visible reaction to the threat of jail, is charged with 34 felonies of falsifying business records to cover up a hush money payment of $130,000 to the porn star Stormy Daniels in the run-up to the 2016 election. Prosecutors allege the payment made by his attorney and fixer Michael Cohen was part of a conspiracy to help Trump cover up negative stories about him amounting to election interference. Trump has pleaded not guilty and denies he ever had an affair with Stormy Daniels. He faces possible prison time if convicted.
In the 2024 U.S. presidential campaign, candidates Joe Biden and Donald Trump are both using artificial intelligence to attract voters. VOA reports on machine learning in this U.S. election.
For political campaigns looking to best target the most voters most economically, generative artificial intelligence is the biggest change in politics.
The models are getting better very rapidly. It feels like every week there's some new model which is significantly better than a previous model.
Those models are powerful tools for campaigns at the national level and at the local level, says political strategist Betsy Hoover.
Think about the campaign that does not have digital staff at all, and therefore really doesn't have a digital content program. Like generative AI allows them to have one, and a pretty robust one if they want to. Or think about a candidate who's running against a well-funded incumbent. AI has a huge role to play in that campaign.
Hoover's firm invests in developing technology for Democratic Party and left-leaning causes. She says the key to machine learning in politics is, quote, doing it the right way.
I don't really know exactly what every Republican campaign would say their standards are, but I do know that Democrats have a high standard for how we're going to use this new technology. And so I'm not really worried about falling behind if it is not ethical and responsible use of AI.
In 2016, the Trump campaign used unprecedented social media advertising with hyper-personalized messages, working with the British data mining firm Cambridge Analytica to directly target individual voters in swing states. Brad Parsale was that campaign's senior advisor for data and digital operations. His firm Campaign Nucleus powers the 2024 Trump website. Parsale told a conservative Freedom Fest conference earlier this year that artificial intelligence can analyze voter data to create mass personalized text and email ads and deploy paid workers to pick up absentee ballots.
In a couple of years, you're going to be able to have this running for office on your cell phone, an AI-driven press release machine, write your campaign emails, fundraising tech, everything right on your cell phone, all built for you.
It's not just the campaigns. Polling by the American Press Institute and the Associated Press show 42% of American voters worry that news outlets will use generative artificial intelligence to create stories during this campaign.
Chinese President Xi Jinping wrapped up his two-day visit to France on Tuesday, his first trip to Europe in 5 years. China and Europe are seeking to mend ties but face major obstacles, including trade disputes and Beijing's support for Russia.
French President Emmanuel Macron invited his Chinese counterpart high into the Pyrenees Mountains Tuesday, the home region of the French leader's grandmother. It was Xi Jinping's first visit to Europe in 5 years, and since then relations have soured. Europe accuses Beijing of subsidizing industries that are undercutting its own companies in areas like electric vehicles.
It's a desire for mutual respect and understanding, and a desire to continue to open up trade, but to ensure that it is fully fair at all times, whether in terms of tariffs, aid, or access to markets.
Xi made no immediate concessions, says analyst Steve Sang.
Xi Jinping does not feel that China has an overcapacity issue, and he feels that the European position on Chinese EV, for example, is unreasonable. But then, of course, he is also trying to engage with the French and potentially having a leading Chinese car manufacturer setting up facilities in France.
Western nations accuse China of aiding Russia's invasion of Ukraine through increased trade and the sale of dual-use goods that can be used to make weapons. President Xi rejected those accusations.
China is neither the creator of the crisis nor a party, a participant of the war. However, we didn't just watch the fire burning across the river, but have been playing an active role in achieving peace.
That is demonstrably false, and European leaders must take a tougher line, says analyst Igor Mehrheim-Air.
What they've really failed at is spelling out to Xi Jinping what will be the cost of China supporting Russia's war of aggression, which it clearly is. I mean, if it wasn't, we wouldn't already have 4 Chinese companies on the EU sanction list. And you know, the circumventions are much broader than that. If we look at exports, Chinese exports to Russia have increased year on year by about 45%.
EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen urged Beijing to use all its influence on Russia.
We agree that Europe and China have a shared interest in peace and security.
Europe should be more realistic about Beijing's ambitions, says analyst Mehrheim-Air.
Wherever I look, from Africa to South China Sea to Ukraine, China is playing a destructive role. And I do not see common areas of interest in these matters.
She arrived Tuesday evening in Serbia, a key Balkan partner in Beijing's Belt and Road investment program. Later this week, she heads to Hungary, his closest European ally, and a long-time thorn in the side of EU unity on Russia and China policy.
The United States and Turkey have resumed security cooperation talks, and analysts say Turkish forces are poised to fill a vacuum should United States forces pull out of Syria. Pentagon officials say there are no plans for a withdrawal, but analysts point to signs it may happen.
Iraq has been pressing the US to withdraw its forces who are helping to fight the Islamic State militant group in the region. As both sides continue discussions, Pentagon officials say there are no plans for a withdrawal of American troops from neighboring Syria. But analysts say a complete pullout could be looming.
Iraqi Prime Minister Mr. Shia Soudani asked officially to the US, to the American administration, to end the international coalition. And if US troops move out from Iraq, of course, they have to move out from Syria, because all the logistic going to eastern Syria is coming from Iraq.
Turkey and the United States this year resumed regular meetings of the strategic mechanism which addresses shared security issues. The resumption of the talks is a sign of improving bilateral ties, which analysts say could widen Turkey's role if and when US troops pull out of Syria.
In parallel with the US decisions, there must be a coordinated effort. That's a fact. Otherwise, Assad regime, Russia or Iran will fill the gap after a probable US withdrawal. So Turkey must be prepared exactly what to do in the region.
Turkey and Iran are historic rivals, and Ankara shares Washington's concerns over Tehran's growing influence. Assuming America's role would mark a break in traditional Turkish foreign policy and stoke the Iranian-Turkish rivalry.
Ankara will take over the place in the equation against, or in the balance against Iran, the role of US, which will be against the Turkish diplomatic tradition, because Turkey always shies away from getting into the shoes, of Americans or doing America's work.
Turkish forces already have a military presence in Iraq and Syria in their war against the Kurdish rebel group, the PKK, which is fighting the Turkish state. US forces in Syria, fighting the Islamic State group, are working with the Syrian Democratic Forces, or SDF rebels, which includes local Kurdish militias accused by Ankara of being linked to the PKK. Analysts say SDF faces an uncertain future in the event of an American withdrawal.
They are very afraid about the future. They are just waiting a miracle. We don't know which kind of miracle, because from Damascus side there is no hope. From Turkey, they know that the Turks want to destroy them, and they know that US will withdraw a day from northeastern Syria.
US collaboration with Syrian Kurdish forces, considered by Ankara as terrorists, was a permanent thorn in bilateral ties. With the expected pullout of American troops approaching, analysts say the talk between the two allies now is about increasing cooperation.
Hindu nationalist Prime Minister Narendra Modi cast his ballot in India's ongoing general election after giving several inflammatory campaign speeches accused of targeting minority Muslims.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi walks out of the voting booth holding up a finger marked with indelible ink. He's just voted in the election's third phase, which includes his home state of Gujarat. Cheered on by supporters, he urged people to vote despite the scorching temperatures.
I once again tell the people to vote in large numbers today in Gujarat and wherever else election day is taking place. Let us celebrate the festival of democracy.
Modi is among 172 million people eligible to vote this Tuesday. People across 11 states have been called to the polls to fill 94 out of a total of 543 seats of the lower house of parliament. Back in the 2019 election, Modi's BJP won more than 70 of those seats. It's been campaigning on India's fast-growing economy and a Hindu nationalist agenda.
The current government is good, but the public needs to be provided with more jobs. If people get employed, then they will be happy.
Everyone should live in brotherhood, and I ask our Prime Minister to stop pitching Hindus and Muslims against one another.
The latest round of polling comes as Modi and his allies have ramped up attacks on the Muslim community, drawing accusations of hate speech. Results will be announced on June 4th after the 7th phase of voting is complete. Surveys suggest Modi's party will once again win a comfortable majority.
Counting was underway after Chadians voted in a presidential election to end 3 years of military rule that opponents of junta leader Mahamat Idris Deby have dismissed as a fix. Chad is the first of 4 military regimes in the Sahel to hold an election after successive coups in Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger since 2020.
Election inspectors open a ballot box at a polling station here in Chad's capital. Vote counting for its presidential election is underway, the first to take place in Africa's current junta-led states. At this polling station, the process began under the watchful eye of voters.
Before, when we voted, our votes were taken and given to another president.
So this year, we want our vote to be respected.
Although voting was largely peaceful, one man was shot dead in the city of Mundu by an attacker who did not have an electoral card and was not allowed to vote. One of the favourites to win the election is President Mahamat Idris Deby, the son and successor of Idris Deby, who was killed in a gun battle in 2021 after 30 years in power. Among his 9 challengers is Prime Minister Suksay Masra, who is considered his main rival. Some opposition members and activists had pushed for a boycott, raising concerns about vote rigging. Whoever wins will be tasked with addressing voters' concerns about the high cost of living in the country, the 4th least developed in the world, according to the UN.
I wish for security for the country and also the population suffering from the high cost of living. Whoever wins must consider social issues, otherwise things will be difficult for the vulnerable.
Final results are expected on the 5th of June. If no candidate secures more than half of the votes, a second round will take place on the 22nd of June. The vote comes not long after the temporary withdrawal of some US troops from the country. Chad is an important Western ally in a region of Africa grappling with jihadism and courted by Russia.
And our next door neighbor, South Africa's coastal city of Durban, is facing a severe water crisis, and this is ahead of national elections, with residents suffering from prolonged dry taps as well as poor sanitation services. The crisis has largely been blamed on mismanagement and corruption by the ruling ANC party and could now tip the balance in the upcoming general elections.
Hidden behind breathtaking beaches and subtropical climate, a crisis is looming in the South African city of Durban. For months, residents like Rani Naidu have seen their taps run dry on a daily basis.
You see, we don't have any water. We cannot do anything, and it's a really...
The shortages have placed a physical and financial burden on local populations who are forced to purchase bottled water and to carry it over long distances. Hoping to tackle the crisis, local groups recently began distributing water to disenfranchised communities, but their efforts are far from enough.
It is better, dilute our water and give us cyanide in it and let us die immediately, because this is a slow death.
Many are blaming the ruling ANC party for the crisis and accuse it of failing to address Durban's crumbling infrastructure.
Our president himself is not even helping us anymore, so I'm very, very disappointed with the whole situation in South Africa.
And with the country heading into a general election on May 29th, opposition parties are trying to capitalize on the growing dissatisfaction in KwaZulu-Natal province.
The stakes are high for the ANC, but this time around it's even worse because almost all political parties have vested interest in what is happening in KwaZulu-Natal in general, and they are promising that if they were to win, they would do things better.
Durban's ANC mayor recently announced plans to build a new dam in order to solve the water crisis, but it may be too little too late for the city's disgruntled voters.
And that's how we wrap up our international news. We go for a net break. Stop. We are still
Kude lesinye isikhathi ngaphandle kwalesi.
Aba research bafunze.
Being risky means ukuthi nalokuwa kwayo kulula.
Nathi kufuna sente ukukhicita lokhu kusendlini.
Renewal of TV licenses for 2024 is now open. Here is a quick reminder. A viewer's TV license costs 180 emalangeni per device. Other accessories such as decoders and set-top box cost 50 emalangeni per device. For traders and repairers, TV license costs 300 emalangeni per business area. And now, to pay your TV license, use these following methods. You can use MTN Mobile Money with the number 762222000 or dial *007 *3 *7 hash. Or you can use Eswatini Imali. And And you can pay our TV license at any post office in the country. Another option is you can use any Nedbank branch using our TV license account number 1199004337. Don't forget, when paying for your viewers TV license, reference with your PIN at all times. And when paying for a retailer TV license, reference with your TIN at all times. For more information, call us on 7802-4543 or 34050163 or 34020879. And you can send us a WhatsApp message on 762222000.
Welcome back. Sakuvusela nalo sanza kusivule lapha esividele ukuthi sitabe sikhuluma nje kabanti ngekubhadalwa kwesikweledi noma nje salabo labake ama beneficiaries si emfundzate wahulumende. Sifuna ukuva ukuthi ingabe lo msebenzi uhamba kanjani. Sakhombela ukuthi la sikunyisele lehovisi ngeminyaka ka2017 ukuthi lihambele ama beneficiaries labazuzile kumfundzate wahulumende. In 2019 le consortium identified ama beneficiaries la over 25,000 kulabo labang 25,000 10,000 bakhona ukuthi basayine ama consent forms. Kanti ke ngekusho nje report yelitiko la Labor ya December in 2022 le lovisi lakhona ukuthi lithole imali lenganga 280 million kusukela nga2017. Sifuna ukuva ukuthi ingabe eminyakeni lophelile leli hovisi likhona kusebenza kanjani. I'm joined by Gugu Mahlalela, lo project coordinator aka scholarship recovery loan repayments. Siyakwamukela. Thank you so much for joining us. Kathi sagcina.
Ngiyabonga Lungelele, siyavusela nembukele ekhaya.
Yeah, itolo nje besine baka Labor nakhona bamemetela nje ama scholarships la available in the SADC region as well as local universities. Sesithi ke no assess sale siteka vele sale sibuko lokuthi vele lama beneficiaries ayabhadala invele ngalokuthi vele insayele enkulu lena yahulumende lokuthi akusitakala labanye njengoba nathi sasitakala kathi I think kuva nje lokuthi ingabe umnyakeni lophelele nisebenze kanjani mangakhe ama beneficiaries la khona lokuthi avele hovisini asayine lawo ama consent forms nokuva nje ukuthi malini vele imali nekhona kuyikoleka eminyakeni ephelile.
Ngiyabonga kakhulu Lungelele. Last year 2023 sisebenzile sasebenza kahle. Sikwelekile imali enganga 60 million from January to December. Bandvu lesikhonile ukuthi sibatfole bacale kubhadala babe 2000 imali yabo labayilethako monthly mase sihlanganisa yenda 900,000. So ngekubuka comparing to 2022 sikhuphukile kancane shothi emandla siyawafaka nemfutho.
Ingabe vele in terms of ukuthi nje sive si forthcoming ngiyadlo ukuthi vele imvolena lenhlaleni solone nanzisa lwadi ngayo ukuthi bampa bevele officeini lenu basayine lama consent forms bayikhokhe imali. Ngabe vele mhlambe lokuvela nje the level of compliance yema beneficiaries ikanjani solona cala?
Ngiyabonga Lungelele. Ama beneficiaries ayavela but ke akaveli ngalendlela lesingafisa ukuthi ngabe avela ngayo. But ke siyacabanga ukuthi ama challenges abo labanye ukhanza ukuthi basemisebenzini abakhoni ngiko bese sesiba netindlela letinye singameli nje ukuthi beneficiary izeyivele office or isithinze thineke siyathatha lo lusido siluyise la khona nangabe ucashiwa sengibekisi nje Eswatini TV siyavela Lungelele sikumela ngaphandle vela sitawukhuluma tindzaba te scholarship but ke siyamshayela prior phela Lungelele so that atowati naye atilungisele mentally ukuthi cha kusasa ngidila nesikweleti. So bona bayavela loku njengoba ushito nje because siya preach vele about indzaba yekubhadala netindzaba ukuthi ke mawufike on time uthola le indulgence ya 50% yekubhadala 50% as isho le agreement ye scholarship. So bandvu ke vele bayet especially labathanza kucala kusebenza they come ngekuthi vele bafuna kubenefita from lo 50% bese ke labanye ukhanza ukuthi vele sekuvele seyengcile ukhanza vele so 100% but siyakhuthatha nje ukuthi it's better to start kunekuthi umele ukuthi angivele sengu 100% sale ngima ngoba lokhu kahle njengoba ngihlale ngisho nje ukuthi masofikile siyahlala etafuleni sibukisane ukuthi okay statement sakho lokhu sesithi nje 100% plus 5% sesithi mhlambe le installment yakho monthly mase calculated seyisetudlwanyana siyabukisana ukuthi cha ungabhadala malini phela lungelele siyathi ukuthi mhlambe le mali seyisetulu ngeke usayi afforda bese ke siyakhulumisana ngiko le kuhle kakhulu ukuthi vele abantu siyabavumela ukuthi sinegotiate angabe sesoyakhameka umuntu ngenzaba yokubhadala scholarship.
So mawuthi mangabe umuntu afike on time sithi kahle kahle ngibekise nje mhlambe sengicelile kusebenta kumele ukuthi ngisheshe nginibekele ukuthi usengutholile umsebenzi mhlambe nginekho na contract yeminyaka ngicela kuvela ngikhokhele ngikhona ukukhokha ngabe sichaze nje lokuthi vele ngesikhathi singanani after I've started working ukuthi sengakhona kuvela ngikhokhe nami leyo mali le ngikhona ukuyikhokha.
Ngiyabonga Lungelele. Le study loan agreement lo sign nje mathola le scholarship siyasho sithi within 3 months of employment ufuna utowenda sivumelana secala kubhadala wenele arrangement. So vele we are sticking to that within 3 months of employment nje kufuna uvele bese ke siyakhulumisana ngithi ndzaba te scholarship masa utakule yes 4 inyanga kule yes 5 awuvele asisayikhulumi because vele sewu breach le agreement vele sowuwelela ku 100%. Ikhona ke nale indzaba yema contracts asumuntu mine bengu contract bengingacabanga ukuthi ma contract uyabhadala ungacala ubhadale so siyacizelela nje kumaswati ukuthi le agreement ithi mawusebenta kuthi usebenta ku 3 months contract 6 months contract lokuthi nje uyasebenta lokukahle ke ukuthi mase iphelile le contract asesithi umcashi wakhe akasayirenew uyeta ka scholarship usho ukuthi cha seyiphelile contract yami angeke ngisahola usinikete incwadi siconfirm nathi nemcashi wakho bese siyema ke kumcashi siphinze sikutsheleke ukuthi sicizelele ukuthi mase utfolile umsebenzi uphinze ubuye phela ungabe sewushona phansi.
So speaking of nje le mali le khokhwako abe kule agreement ngibekise ukuthi vele imiholo lesithola kayifani lomunye uthi yena ulungela ngiyabekisa nga100 lomunye yathi ulungela 1000 ngabe niyakubuka yini nako lokuthi le beneficiary le itawukhona khokha malini mali phasi kakhulu nje beneficiary engakhona kuyikhokha nalesetulu kakhulu.
Njengoba usho nje ilungelele kuyahlukana vele lomunye utawukhanza ukuthi yebo ufunzile imali yakhe lafuna ibhadale isetulu kakhulu but ukhanza ukuthi umsebenzi la usebenzako vele akaholi imali engakanani so siyacela ukuthi ungasitsheli ngemlomo usiyasiniketa i-pay slip yakho sibone phela ukuthi cha vele lungelele unegotiatela lo 100 rand vele ngeke akhone lokubhadala so siyabukisana nje ngoba nje bengishito asifuni kumkhama umuntu and nalaba affordako vele they do pay ukhanza ukuthi umuntu i-installment yakhe asengibekise nje ithi 800 athi yena nomina ngambhadala 5000 because ngifuna kusheshe ngicethe because uyakhona lokho afforda so asithi across the board ukuthi cha vele kufuna ubhadalele imali le nangabe ungayi afford ngeke sithi bhadala 800 kanti uhola 2000 yabo so njengoba usho we can go as low as lokukhulumisana kwethu ngeke ngisho ukuthi lungelele hayi siyafika 100 rand ngoba wonke umuntu bese soyakhala athi 100 rand khanze I collection yethu seyehla but nje siyabukisana looking at your pay slip maybe your bank statement sibuke ne spending sakho phela ngoba lo muntu utawukhala kanzima ubuka le bank statement yakhe ukhanza ukuthi hayi lo mvulo na mhlambe uthanza bomnanzi kakhulu but phela you need to honor leskwele sakho se-scholarship because nalamanye ema loans akho nawo you do honor them so sithi nje treat i-study loan as any other loan that you have.
Yeah. Ingabe kuva nje ukuthi ngimaphi ama challenges mhlambe leni ihlangabetana nabo we have different characters ebamvula ngephandle labanye banengikhani labanye nje banemanga solo nje babene ukuthi ngeke bona babhadale labanye kathi bayiboleke imali solo niyabahambela but solo nani ingabe kuba yini inkinga nenihlangabetana nato niyakhona nikubatfola mabe ningabatfoli niyafika yini vele to the extent lapho mhlambe senibathumelela amasamane senibambikisa enkantolo.
Ngiyabonga ilungelele yo ama characters maningi njengoba usho labanye vele banayo lengane akafuni kubhadala state ama reasons akhe lo muye nje uyakulwisa ukuthi hawu beningakufika ingani ngisaqala kusebenta kanti lo laba bese sebayakhohlwa ukuthi phela akusi i-obligation ya scholarship ukuthi akufune wena as the beneficiary nguwe lona le obligation ukuthi uye njengoba isho njengaside loan agreement sithi mase ufuna kube nguwe lo yako uyokhuluma indzaba ukuthi ubhadala kanjani isikweleti but ke lokhu kahle is that we have a well trained team vele sesiyakwati lokudila nalama different characters because lomunye vele uphula umoya ngendlela la khuluma ngayo but nje we remain calm ngekuthi sikhulumise ngalendlela nangabe vele sigcine sihlulana awu sebenzisana na SV Mdladla and associates kube sekuba ngibo ke laba yesesekwedlulisela kubo bese ke bakuthumelela leyo ncwadi otherwise kude lesingakwenda vele mawungafuni ufuna bese sesiku escalator indzaba yakho.
Yeah, so wena ngabe indzaba yakho sebayimixe ngale bamelini sebakuthumeleleni lencwadi, then how much time do you have to come forward to sign le consent form uqale kubhadala after sowuthwele lencwadi?
Usually letincwadi letisuka kumabameli tiniketa 7 working days, so they give you enough time for you to recollect and calm down ube sesoyeta ke ukukhulumisana nathi. Yeah,
so what are other strategies nje mhlambe leni wasebenzisako ukuzama ukuthola ama beneficiaries? Yathi kuthi kunebamfula abaceda esikolweni way back boma 80s niyakhona ukubathola isekhona invele leyo data leyo because lo muntu awubane ukuthi mina kathi angaceda emva singaceda boma 70s ngaceda boma 80s ngeke bangithole. Are you able to locate those beneficiaries using lama strategies in?
Yes, Lungelele, we do have le data yabo. Unfortunately, nangabe nje usawase ufunza ngama 70s shokuthi vele umuntu retire so sekhaya. Unfortunately asikhoni ke kwanyalo ukuthi singabe siyaba pursue labantu labo. Sisamele nje instruction from ministry because sesiyahlangana nabo baningi kakhulu. Uzukhaza ukuthi labantu seba retire ukuthi sende njani, but for now asikhoni vele ukuthi bese siyabahambela. But ke as for my strategies lesinawo leswasebenzisako maningi Lungelele because lesikwendako nje we do make calls to bantu seba invite ukuthi abavele office. Every day there's a team lephuma around the country iphume kusonzeka lelusito kulaba labakhashane labangakhoni kufika kithi siyasebenzisa nabo social media so nje nangabe ule khashane kakhulu bohlathi bonhlangano you can always usendele we have a WhatsApp line, we have Facebook ubhale khona ke ukuthi omine gugu mahlalela nangama details ami ngicela kucala kubhadala bese siyakusida ke kanjalo.
So athi nivele lama repayment offers like bhadala kanjani ibhange debit order ngenda kanjani kuze kutonda mhlambe impilo yami nani ezilhovisi ibe melula bhadala kanjani?
Indlela lesinato tekubhadala tinzathu Lungelele uyabhadala through umqashi wakho usho ukuthi nje ithathwa uma uyibona ku payslip yakho ukuthi iyahamba imali ungabhadala through a debit order. I-debit order yethu ke inema dates lang 4 onamhla ka 10, 20, 25 na 30 or 31 lesingayithatha khona imali ngoba uyati ukuthi sihola ngemalanga lahlukene, so shothi nje nabe uhola in between the 20th ngithi nje 21 and 25 shothi wena ufaka 25 umeke sure nalo ukuthi nje ukugcizelela ukuthi umuntu usicela ukuthi afake le date la kadiko ukuthi vele imali ikhona, ungathi nje ngoba sesikutfolile bese sifaka mhla ka 30 kanti uhola mhla ka 20 vele chances are high ukuthi imali mhlambe into bese iphelile o seyinciphile kule installment lo lekufuna siyithathe. Lokunye nje lesingakusexwayiso kuso because sesike sakubona ukuthi umuntu utawuthi makahola akhiphe le mali avele mayithi nje ncence in contact avele ayikhiphe imali mase siyafika thina maybe next day in the morning imali sekude bese siyayibona le trend ukuthi hawu cha lo muntu lona shothi udlala lidayisi lokhu bese kuba buhlungu ukuthi ukhanza ukuthi umuntu sewufuna kumbe libhange lakhe limsite limboleke imali sibe sesekubona lapho ke ukuthi so uyeta ukuthi ha scholarship yathi mina bengisolo ningakhona ukuyithatha imali yami but sengifuna kuye ebhange ngicela kumane onke lama installments ami bengiwamisa sale ngabhadala because I need a loan so ngiyathi nje akungafiki lapho siyacela ukuthi abantu ba-honorishe lama debit order abo noma ngabe ke udibhadalela ebhange because that's the third one uyatendela ke i-scheduled a stop order but siyacela ukuthi bese soyasiniketa le proof ukuthi cha ngiyindile le scheduled stop order bese ke sesiyathatha ke bese iyathatha ke ngalawo malanga lo washito but njengoba ngisho kugcizelela ukuthi siyacela ukuthi nangabe uselect 20 vele le mali ayibe khona because lesikubonile ema defaulters abamaningi and masibuka ukhanza ukuthi masiconsultana elibhange ukhaza ukuthi imali vele bese ithethwe noma umuntu usosinikete a wrong bank account uyabo so ekugcineni sitagcine vele sesi escalator and scholarship njengoba sihlale sisho we don't want to be seen to be fighting siyangiko sicela ukuthi abantu nje abacomply bangakaphushwa so that ngobe bayathi ukuthi the good cause of the project is that njengoba itolo beneba ka scholarship ku sponsorishe more and more children.
Yeah, so ngifuna kuvula ukuthi ngabe sekwendeke kaningi, excuse me. Nasekwendeke kaningi lokuthi le mali ingakhona ikuthathwa yakhona ukuthi nase ingene sekuphela about 3 months nithathe lezizumbulu za 3 months.
Unfortunately asikwendi kanjalo siqhubeka sithathe lo 300 ngilokunye lesike sabukisana nelitiko uthi phela bantu batawuthatha lenzaba ebhadala scholarship angayithathi serious ufuna sibuke indlela ukuthi sirecoup njani le mali ya lo imisile in the previous months because thina nje lesikwendako ukuthi maso sithola siqhubeka nalo 300 angibekise lo mbhadalako asibese sithi times 3 sesithatha 900. Yes.
Excuse me, so ngifuna siqhubeke kuva nje ukuthi ngiyakhumbula ukuthi excuse me ngicotha kakhulu ngicela nje ukuthi sithathe ilikhefu nje sibe umasinyana khona manje.
Be sure to catch Business Watch every Wednesday between 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. where we feature the latest updates on business news, market trends, and exclusive interviews with industry leaders, as well as insights on emerging small and medium enterprises in the commercial sector. Business Watch, your business leader.
Ujala masada mahle kunathi lesa.
Sabatandi ukuthi njengalokho sivile sive sithi khulume.
Asifundise sinemukele sicwelisa ngaloko ukuphatha miseka sicubeka nayo interview yethu sinakho kumahlalela long project coordinator ka study loan recovery project asivusele sibonga ukuthi solo nathi nje vele khukho sicwelisa nje ngaloko ukuphatha miseka bese sisachaza lana siyakhumula ukuthi last year namametelani consortium lokho ukuthi nifisa lokho ukuthi labo labasolo bangafuni ukubhadala mhlambe leyo mali nitaw ba deny ama government services engabe senicalile nivele naloko kuhamba kanjani?
Ngiyabonga Lungelele asibadinayi sithi awucala usothe scholarship repayment sakho bese soyabuya le process is ongoing Eswatini Lungelele ukuthi don't get into the process maningi nalamatiko lekufune lathinzekako so kusese behind ngathini sisalungisa so that mase kuqala vele kungabi nema glitches kuvele kube yindvo le smooth ngabe sebantu usikhanza sesimisa abantu laba wrong so sisa refine kahle nathi data yethu sakhulumisana nalamatiko lathinzekako but yona iyeta ngiko nje ngikhuthatha kakhulu ukuthi ungameli lelisuku lelo njengoba labanye ukhanza ukuthi asengibekise nje ulungelele lesinye strategy sethu lesisebenzisako asengibekise nje kunenkampani lenkulu mase siyabuka sikhanza ilist abantu mhlambe babo 70 or 50 enkampanini sibese sikhulumisana naleyo nkampani sithi cha sicela simane kuvela sibe nelipoint sitokhulumisa naba laba kufundiswa nguhulumende lo baqashile wena mqashi bese ke bayasiniketa ke leso sikhathi ukhaza ukuthi siya enkampanini awuyabathi abantu mababaningi bayayengana hayi ungayi wena kunjani beyeteke labanye bese labanye abasaveli lesibese siyakwenda ke lungelele lapho vele mase sengcile enkampanini yakho siyabona ukuthi cha phela sesilethile usito edvutane kwa nawe shothi awuketi because vele awufuni bese ke siyayifaka bamelini bese kuba ngibo labayichubako bababhalele leto tincwadi with the intention ukuthi at the end vele siyadzinga lokuthi bese siya prosecute phela ngoba ngeke sigcine ngetincwadi but ke yasenda kanjalo nje lungelele kuyi process akusiko ukuthi info letoba overnight sifuna ku refine kahle ukuthi mase sifakile esiveni kube yindlu vele lesmooth sailing.
Okay, speaking of prosecution nje ngabe senifikile ni lapho vele nitawuhlangana enkantolo nema beneficiaries la solo acuba enkani.
For now sisengaka kwendi lungelele nakhona njobe ngisho we need to kuthiwani ngesingesi like ufuna silungise kahle singathi sesenkantolo sekuba nema glitches vele siyalungisa nje bakhona lese siba beke eceleni sibuke amaphepha abo because angithi mawenkantolo ufuna amaphepha onke seka set ma agreements abo ma invoices labhadala ngawo uhulumende so yindvo lesifisako vele ukuthi sigcine siyendile ngoba bakhona vele labangafuni lokubhadala so ngeke ke sibayekele ngoba phela basihlava lesibi ukhanza ukuthi yena into ubatshela labayathi awu mina ngabatshela emehlweni baka scholarship ukuthi vele ngeke ngibhadale so we don't want leyo bad influence ngiko ke labenta kanjalo vele indlela ethi itawugcina ifikile enkantolo.
Okay, so ingabe nje seloni iqalile nje ukusebenza as lihovisi senigoleke nje imali lenganani iyajabulisa invele leyo mali lekubuka the number of beneficiaries lenina ku data yena
ngicela ngayi-quantify but what I can say is that we have surpassed the target hulumende lasiniketayo yona. In fact, we are almost tripling the target lakaziniketa yona hulumende mangayibeka nje in average ngathi average per annum we are collecting about 60 million per annum sukela saqala so which is almost tripling what government bekasimandate ukuthi sikoleke so noma umuntu angadishaya isifuba thina siyadishaya isifuba ukuthi we have done well ngiko nje sithi wonke umuntu siyacela ukuthi asibambise because longa sibambisi vele asifuni kube nguye lo sithonsela phasi vele longa sibambisi simfake bamelini because nathi we need to maintain the integrity and naloku kweleka which is our mandate because as bebakhona baka labor bekungibo laba award ama scholarships the number is etulu so nathi we need to be seen sifaka lokungetulu kuloku lesikufaka.
Okay, so in terms of mhlambe ama beneficiaries lasashile mhlabeni what procedure lekumele ukuthi mhlambe alandzele ngibekise ngiloyo mdali ngileyo relative kuvela nje keni ukuthi cha beneficiary X akasekho mhlabeni ngicela mhlambe sale nimsusa ku data.
Angiyabonga Lungilele siya encourage ukuthi umuntu masashonile especially nangabe vele umtali oleso sihlobo siyathi ukuthi abe benefitile ukuthi sivele ehovisi noma ke siyasithumela ngalabo social media ongalabo WhatsApp ma ibank death certificate usho ukuthi cha lona so shile emhlabeni so that nathi stawu fine tune le data yethu singadijela ukuthi we have 10,000 extra people lesingaba recover from them kanti sebantu labasishile emhlabeni so kumcoka lokuthi bavele kwanyalo bangesabi ngeke bese sithi ababhadale babhadalele lehlobo kusete lomthetho lo bakhompela ukuthi bende njalo kwanyalo nje kusita ukuthi sathi ukuthi how imali beyingena from lungelele seyimise ukuthi akasekho emhlabeni noma bengakaqali ukubhadala nje sto fine tune le data yethu sathi ukuthi cha laba abasekho so uvele sale siba writer off.
Okay, so kokugcina nje just kufuna le clarity kahle nje ukuthi uvela nini ehovisini lo 50% umbhadalana kanjani na uqala ukusebenza isikhathi lesinganani?
Okay, ngiyabonga Lungelele. Study loan agreement lo sign uma uthola scholarship. Sithi within 3 months of employment you need to start paying. Ufuna wendele arrangement to start paying. Nangabe ke sekuyendeka uyafika after the third, I mean the so on the 4th to whatever month vele lapho sobhadala 100%. Lokusho ukuthi sobhadala yonke le mali la kubhadalela ihulumende plus 5%. Nalona lo bhadala 50%, 5% uyambhadala. Lengacela nje ukuklarify lo 5% ubalwa per annum ngoba sibese siba nenkinga umuntu so uyatibalela ngendlela yakhe athi hayi manje asasiye 5% lona mina mangithi ngiyabala ngithola lokho naloko it's in the agreement akusiko ukuthi kuqhamuke ne consortium it's in the agreement labanawo nje lama agreements mina ngingafisa lokuthi ngibacele ukuthi bawafunze so that you familiarize yourself ngoba bese sebayasilwisa but ke anyways we are always ready with information ngiloko nje Lungelele.
All right, sinasibonga kakhulu. Thank you so much kukumbukele sisema ukuthi Sauti Vele bayatholakala ku social media kanjalo nasemahovisini abo lapha eMbabane eDlanibeka ofuna ukuva kabandi ungavele uchumane nabo. Seselkhefu sawubuya sophetha hlelo.
Be sure to catch Business Watch every Wednesday between 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. where we feature the latest updates on business news, market trends, and exclusive interviews with industry leaders, as well as insights on emerging small and medium enterprises in the commercial sector. Business Watch, your business leader.
Ujala masada mahle kunathi lesa.
Sabadandi ukuthi njengalokhu sifile sive sithi khulumeni.
Muhle sekutavela kuvala mina umlingani selokho ngathi solo yakhwehlela la celeni.
Lo mkhuhlane lo dlakile kulabalanga.
Yeah, sithembe ngeke ngithelele kodwa nje sifike emaphethelweni lehlelo lethu lo mhla sithembe ukuthi ukujabule konke lesikuphathele kona nalo muhla. If you've just joined us, worry not, you can still rewind on YouTube. You can still watch it tomorrow. Later today, it is there. It's uploaded with all the other episodes that's been out lapha ehlelweni. To stay tuned for the other programs that Eswatini TV offers you today. Sale kahle.